Another important feature from Delta is Delta allows you to what we call schema enforcement feature, and also supports schema evolution feature. What does this mean exactly? So typically, if you read a data file, you will find that your table, right, consists of certain columns. Let's say C1, which is a string, C2 is an int, C3 is a date. Like three different formats, three different columns, three different types. When you specify this schema and say, I'm expecting my table to have a column in string, followed by a column as an integer, followed by a column as a date. This is the schema. Delta can enforce the schema. So whenever data arrives that doesn't fit into this schema, Delta can reject this data, will raise an error. So if you try to read the data that doesn't conform to the schema, let's say you're reading you can read a string, but in the integer you put like a string, like hello or something. So Delta will fail this change. Why? Because Delta has a schema enforcement feature that makes it easy for you to enforce the contract of your table. So you no longer have to worry about someone changes the table at the source without you having to know about it. Another important thing is, okay, what about my contract actually is flexible? I want my contract to be flexible in a sense that I want users to append new columns, to add a new column, and let's say this column is a Boolean column. In Databricks and Delta, you can support something called Schema Evolution. So the first part here was called schema enforcement. The other part, which allows you to accept the changes on the schema from the source, is called Schema Evolution, which is typically allows you to have tables that could be changing. You are not rigid in a sense that you have fixated the schema and nothing changes. No, you can accept a different schema or an evolution of your schema as you go along with your data. And this is really so powerful feature, because quite often data doesn't stay the same for long. You start the project, you know what you are doing, 3 columns, my table 3 columns, and you want to do the report again, the 3 columns and so on. But as you go along, the project progress and things change, and the use case become more complex, and more complex mean more complex data model. That means additional columns or a changing of an existing column or dropping an existing column. This is a change. If you are rigid, if the operational system allows you to do this with ease, the analytic system, which is Databricks and Delta Lake, should also allows you to do this with ease. And that's how Schema Evolution work. So Databricks Delta supports both modes: schema enforcement, to be very rigid, nothing change, or schema evolution, where you can allow for additional columns to be added or columns to be dropped, and so on and so forth. So that's it for this lesson, and see you in the next lesson.